voting?
I'll come on to that in a minute.
Referendum, yes.
Is that your question?
Yeah, the referendum
as well?
Because if the UK leaves the EU, and French, so what's going to happen legally? What's going to happen legally?
I don't think that's going to affect anything like that, at least not in the immediate period.
Okay.
But I think there would be an increase in nationalist sentiment in Britain were that to be the case. Both in British nationalism, Scottish nationalism, and in my opinion, from that point of view, I am opposed to exiting. And that doesn't mean I support the European Union. My opinion, what we should have is a socialist United States of Europe. I want a unified Europe under the democratic control of the people, which means public ownership of the decisive resources, banks and major industries across the whole of Europe, so that you can plan the use of the resources, human and material, to serve the benefits of the needs of the population. And for those people who think that's some sort of utopian dream, I put it to you that the general atmosphere developing in many of the most wealthy capitalist countries of the world is shifting towards the agenda that I have been talking about for 30 years at Speaker's Corner. And that is a transformation of society from capitalism to a democratic form of socialism based on public ownership and democratic control of resources to serve the needs of the people. And that idea echoed last summer with the election of Jeremy Corbyn as leader of the Labour Party. His brother will be coming soon to speak on this platform in about half an hour.
His brother, Piers.
Yeah. And we have been arguing these points for decades, but now our time has come.
Why do you think that?
It is because the collective experience of tens of millions, indeed hundreds of millions of people around the world since 2007, 2008 has led people to understand that despite the potential and the ability of human beings to raise their living standards through science, technology, communications and culture, every advance in culture, science and technology, instead of being used to serve the needs of the producer of those technologies or the inventors of those technologies, are used to enslave people even more, to drive down their wages, to worsen their conditions, to undermine their welfare rights, to destroy their individual rights, to increase the power of the state and of multinationals against the interests of the people. And that is why there has been a sea change in the last year in the psychology of tens of millions of people around the world, from the United States of America to Britain, from Europe to Latin America, from Latin America to Africa and Asia. Millions and millions of people are waking up to the nature of the inability of capitalism to raise their living standards so that the next generation live better than the present generation. That is why revolution will be inevitable. Not because we want it or Bernie Sanders wants it, but because the mood within society is created by the conditions that capitalism has driven people into. Any question about that?
I was just going to. Sorry. I was going to say. So, what happens if Bernie Sanders and Jeremy Corbyn lose? Do you sort of accept that the mood isn't shifting as much as you believe it is, or do you blame the sort of electoral system?
Let us be quite clear. The wealthiest democracy in the world does not operate politics democratically. Let's be quite clear about that. That is why Bernie Sanders is gaining support of millions and millions of Americans. Because for the first time, precisely because of the change in the balance of forces technologically, we have been able to run a campaign, as we did in Britain last summer, to transform the political spectrum out of the hands of the billionaires. Let's be clear about this. There are 62 billionaires in the world who own more wealth than half of the world's population. Half of the world. So they control the political process. They fund Hillary Clinton's campaign. Wall Street, Goldman Sachs, the millionaires and billionaires, they fund her campaign. Donald Trump alone, well, what is he?
Everybody knows.
Himself a multi-billionaire. And what we saw on Friday, when people managed to disrupt and prevent Donald Trump from speaking, is the beginning of a revolutionary awakening in America. A revolutionary awakening in America. Because you will not in all your lives have seen something like that. Here we have the answer to your question. What happens if the multi-billionaires manage to rig the election and win the Democratic Party nomination for Hillary Clinton, which I do not think will happen? I think Sanders will win. But let's assume that Hillary Clinton wins. Do you think those millions of people mobilized behind a simple slogan to make a political revolution and transform America from a democracy ruled by the billionaires to a democracy ruled by the people? That is not going to go away. In fact, it will change into a movement to stop Donald Trump and to democratize the structure of power in society from grassroots upwards. That is why what happened on Friday is so significant. Until Friday, and in fact until the Michigan election, everybody had been saying Bernie Sanders can't win the black vote. But I tell you this, once the black communities realize that here we have somebody who's prepared and has backers amongst the youth, amongst the most oppressed, who are determined to stop ultra-right reactionaries and billionaires from seizing control of the political state in America, they will mobilize behind Sanders. And you will see one state after another that Hillary Clinton expects to do okay in. She'll be wiped out by mass movements of the people mobilizing on the streets and in the campaign to get Bernie Sanders elected.
And for Donald Trump as well. That's the worst bit.
My friend, politics in the world is polarizing. Not because of Bernie Sanders, not because of Donald Trump. They are the product of the crisis of capitalism. The crisis of capitalism took away the rug from underneath the social stability that had been established on the basis of growth in the world economy, of high profit rates. Once the profit rate declined in 2007, that is when the economy crashed, because capitalists, any business person will tell you, they invest their money for profit. If they do not make a profit or a high enough profit, they stop investing. That is what the crisis of capitalism is about. Because very simple stories will tell you, and your personal experience will tell you, that what we are witnessing is insanity. Insanity. Because at a time when we have around 30,000 or more people on the housing register, waiting to be housed, homeless people. And we have 3,000 people sleeping on the streets of London, many in circumstances in the last couple of months. There was a case I just read this morning, a guy in Islington died, 24-year-old dead on the street. Of course they sweep him up, chuck him in a coroner's office, and no one really concerned that much, well, so it appears. But of course, once people realise, in London alone, there is enough housing space to provide for every single person on the housing register. Every single person. And it is parasites running large-scale property corporations and rentiers unwilling to invest in developing the economy, who are preventing people from having roofs over their heads. Nobody in Britain needs to be homeless. Nobody. Nobody in London needs to be homeless, because the buildings all around town are sitting there empty. One of my jobs is clearing out empty offices in central London. When you walk down Regent Street, you will notice shops, flashy posh shops. I went into a number of offices to clear them out in the last week in Regent Street. And I tell you this, behind the doors, upstairs in Regent Street, it's the same in Oxford Street, the buildings are empty. Out of 5 floors, 2 are occupied. That's just Regent Street. Then Oxford Street, between here and Baker Street, hundreds of empty properties, hundreds of them. Behind here and Soho, hundreds of empty properties. I can give you a list of dozens and dozens of empty buildings all around the area here, which are supposedly valued at hundreds of millions, billions and billions. That building on the corner, there, that has been empty since 1990. 1990.
25 years.
Its value is supposed to be about £20 million, and yet it sits there empty for 25 years, 26 years now. That is the insanity. And then they say they can't house people. There's a demonstration this morning, thousands of people in Parliament right now, about housing. Why? Because what happens in Britain is a product of the world. We are one, if not the most, international cities in the world. But one consequence of that, I'll take you 1 second. One consequence of that is this. Despite talk about controlling immigration, controlling people who want to get housing benefit, or child benefit, or healthcare services, where Britain welcomes foreigners is in this sense. If you're a gangster from Russia and you want to come to England and escape from criminal charges in Russia, you come with £500,000 and you are automatically granted asylum in Britain.
With passport.
Not only that,
Instant passport.
but they say to you, what would you like to buy? Chelsea Football Club? The Evening Standard? The Independent newspaper? What would you like to buy? You can buy any of them. Not only do they buy the newspapers, do they buy the football clubs, they also buy land. There is something known in London and around Britain as land banking. What does it mean? It means you buy a huge building, let's say the size of a football pitch in Ladbroke Grove. You then leave it empty for 10 years. You do nothing to it, nothing with it. You don't even open the door to people. You put Cytex on the door and you lock it up. And you have security guards with dogs to patrol the empty building on behalf of a gangster
a criminal. And then the government schmoozes them, gets together with them and changes the law to help them to reduce their rates so they don't pay anything in rates, so that the community loses access to the buildings and facilities in their own vicinity. And at the same time, they sell off what you, your parents and your grandparents bought, the National Health Service. Now, doctors, I was on a demonstration on Thursday of the doctors, junior doctors. Now, these are really militant Trotskyists. They have always been Reds under the beds, campaigning militantly against capitalism. Not in my experience, but it seems that's changing. And why is it changing? Because here are honest people who put the lives, health and safety of the community, no matter what background they're from, first. They put people first. But of course, that's an anathema in 2016. Putting people first is in direct contradiction with the dominant philosophy that our friend, the pig lover, he doesn't believe that you should have a national health service free at the point of demand. He believes that the National Health Service should be a conduit to transfer money from your pockets to the pockets of his friends in pharmaceutical companies, his friends in private hospitals, his friends in the suppliers of buildings to rip the population off through private finance initiatives whereby you pay 3, 4 or even 10 times the price of building a hospital on the open market by using the private finance initiative. And then what do? They throw the burden onto the doctors, nurses and ancillary staff in the hospitals. Our NHS, our services, our taxes pay for it, and the billionaire class and their friends, David Cameron, George Osborne and co, they are behind plans to transfer these things to their buddies, to their mates.
Sorry? PFI really accelerated under New Labour.
Well, of course, because the Labour Party, until last summer, the Labour Party was taken over by a group of people who better belonged in the Conservative Party.
Yes.
And once we had a genuine democratic election inside the Labour Party, as I explained at the time, we won with a landslide majority. Now, the brother of the Labour leader will be here in a few minutes to speak to you about these questions as well. He's on his way now to come and speak. Now, you were going to say, sorry.
I'm sorry, I want to go back a bit. So you were saying about the homeless housing issue, and I completely agree with you, but in the interest of having a balanced argument, say the house in the corner you mentioned, are you talking about state sponsorship taking away private property? So for argument's sake, with your Russian, let's not say Russian gangster, but say Russian businessman. Let's say that's owned by a Russian businessman and he also owns factories in this country. Are you talking about the government taking that away and giving it to homeless people? Because fundamentally we do need investment from other...
If you know people are going to die of hypothermia on the streets of London, it is a crime to ignore that. It is the equivalent of corporate manslaughter, in my opinion. That's how we should view it morally, is what I'm talking about. Second, therefore, councils, they have, and we are, at least the people of very similar opinion to myself, now lead the Labour Party. Now we are saying to Labour councils up and down the country and to other councils, but we'll start with our own councils. We are saying to them, open up all empty properties that are sitting there idle and house those people so no one dies of hypothermia. A very simple question about moral responsibility in the modern era. And by the way, that goes for those million refugees running away from wars caused by Britain and America in the Middle East, those people fleeing for their lives and coming to Europe. They should, the moment they land in Lesbos, they should be provided with housing, with food, with clean water immediately. They should not be living in shit. In shit.
Who's going to pay for it? The Greeks don't have that themselves. Who's going to pay for that?
The gentleman here says, who's going to pay? Who's going to pay? How much you think it costs to provide someone with a good tent, with something to sleep on, with some food once a day? How much you think it really costs? How much you're a landlord, tell me.
Oh, you tell me.
We're talking about less.
Why don't you put the homeless?
We're talking about less than £100.
So why don't you
less than £100. I'm just going to deal with. I'll just deal with this question now. The gentleman here said to me, "What would we do about building? How can we take these buildings on?" Councils by law have the right to requisition empty, unused properties. They have the right to impose compulsory purchase orders. They must do so as a moral and a political responsibility. Now, you say to me, how are we going to pay for Syrian refugees or Afghan refugees or Iraqi refugees? Note, the country the refugees come from are directly connected to the countries we bombed in the last 20 years.
So why don't you look at the calls?
They are the countries where people come from.
Here are the calls. Here are the calls.
Yes, we are talking about... Yes, I agree. The cause does not lie in Syria. The cause lies in Washington, London and Berlin.
Wall Street.
That is where the cause lies.
What about the practicalities?
Sorry?
What about the practicalities? How are you going to clothe and feed 5,000 people?
Okay, let me give you an example. You want some simple practicalities.
I want to know how you would decide.
I'm going to answer you right now. Right now. Right now. I'm going to answer you right now.
Thank you.
There is a building there that can house about 50 people. You open the window with a little piece of metal that smashes it. We then lift up the window and we say 50 people in there. My good friend, the brother of Jeremy Corbyn, the leader of the Labour Party, is here. I'd like him to get up and speak and address the crowd for a few minutes.
So, climate change denier.
Just keep and shout. Well, bonsoir tout le monde.
Bonsoir, monsieur.
Apparently in French means good evening all.
Tout le monde.
Right, I am my brother's brother. Or put it more accurately, he used to be my brother, now I am his brother.
Do you have a sister, sir?
No, I have no sister.
Do you have a mother?
No sisters, I have a mother.
You have a mother?
I've been a housing campaigner for 44 years, as well as other things, and I've just come from a big demonstration, about 10,000 people marching to oppose the Tory housing bill. Now my brother couldn't be there, but he sent a message of total support for everybody fighting for decent housing in Britain now, and to stop this blasted dangerous bill which is to destroy council housing and social housing.
And I'm currently homeless because of that policy.
Exactly so. Now, I think you should understand, you look around London now, there's properties going up and up and up and up, and never before in the history of the United Kingdom has it been so cheap to build properties. offices and housing.
about
Never
the land.
before.
Where
Never.
is the
never.
land?
Yet, be quiet please. Yet, it's also the worst housing crisis we have ever had in this country. Those things together tell us one thing. The private open market cannot solve the housing crisis. In fact, it is the cause of the housing crisis. And Cameron and a lot of Labour councils and Tory councils are working now hand in glove with speculators to destroy council housing, to destroy social housing in order to do developments which will be bought by money launderers internationally. People with money who want to invest in property, be quiet. They want to invest in property
Will they
in
improve
order.
those houses, make them better standard of living?
They buy these properties because the values will go up and up, and they're doing it to hide money stolen from others. And this malevolent Tory government want to speed up that process and destroy council housing. That is what the housing bill is all about. They want to force up rents and reduce security of tenure. Now, the reason for that is, of course, that they make money from the property thieves, the developers, and that means we've got to draw a line between us and them. Now, all housing tenures depend on council housing. As long as council housing is there, it holds down rents and charges. And if that is defeated, private rents will go up and up. And the idea of people even owning properties will be out of the window. We'll be all slaves to banks. The banks will own the property and you'll pay rent straight to the bank.
Through tax, stamp
Yes.
duty.
And then they spend it on Trident nuclear missiles.
Don't they get tax revenue from
Oh, he's a landlord. He doesn't
And they spend the tax on Trident nuclear missiles.
You're a landlord, citizen.
He's a rentier parasite.
So we've got to build broad alliances of council tenants, of private tenants, of people on the waiting list, of people including owner-occupiers to stop this housing bill and defend decent housing for all. And we have to make Labour councils accountable.
That's Camden! Scamden!
Daily problem with
Scamden Council
Every day he argues with false friends. False friends.
They say vote
Some
Labour.
of them, be quiet.
I say
Some
vote
of
them.
Some of them were on the march today.
Housing for having a tent.
Some of these councillors were on the housing march today, but they themselves are working with developers in Southwark and destroying the Aylesbury estate. They're destroying council housing while supporting council housing. That's mad. We have to now draw a clear line. Which side are you on?
This started under a Labour government.
For all.
It was a Labour government that prevented the councils.
The answer is support the fight back now, and you find in your area
exactly
local
where.
groups to support. So I'll end there and say, please fight for decent housing for all and support my brother's version of action in the Labour
How
Party
are we to
against
fight?
the Tories and the Blairites.
How?
Thank you.
How? How do we fight? How? Exactly.